So, a few months ago, I made a video which provided my take on the whole Xenoblade X versus Xenosaga situation, and it's come to my attention through various forms of feedback.
If that's not enough for you, there's this awesome video that proves X and disproves Xenosaga.
Video? Didn't know Luxon was on the side of Xenoblade X.
Alright, let's give this video a shot.
20 minutes later.
I appreciate you all for watching this far into the video though, and hope to catch you in the next one. This is JB, signing off.
Wow, that was absolute nonsense.
I really didn't explain this theory all that well, huh? I added way too many confusing elements and extra ideas which had no basis for being included, and now that I have actually beaten both Xenosaga and Xenogears, I've refined this theory to a point where it shouldn't be as outlandishly stupid as it originally seemed. So in today's video, I'm going to be revisiting the idea of how and why the Klaus Saga is about to connect to Xenoblade X. Major spoilers ahead for every Xeno series. The biggest problem with Xenoblade X being canon to the Klaus Saga is that it would suppose that there is a second Earth of similar nature, featuring the same human life on its planet, and experiencing a near identical world-ending calamity. Many have found the prospect of there even being a second planet rather absurd, leading most to the conclusion that both the Xenoblade X explosion and the Klaus experiment must take place in the same moment. But for obvious reasons, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This cutscene from Xenoblade 2 is already crowded as is, featuring the Klaus experiment along with a war against the Saviorite rebels, and by adding two warring alien races into the mix, everything gets all the more complicated, which is why this didn't happen, and both events must be separate. Instead, according to my theory, the Klaus experiment and the Xenoblade X explosion are two separate events, the latter of which likely occurring some thousands of years into the future after the events of Xenoblade 3. This requires the presence of a second Earth-like planet, which may sound far-fetched, but is actually an existing concept within the Xeno series. For example, both Xenosaga and Xenogears have multiple instances of planets known as Jerusalem, named after their homeworld, which would become to be known as Lost Jerusalem. And in Saga's case, there are 5 different planets, all using this one name. Additionally, Takahashi is known for reusing old plot points and concepts from his previous works. I mean, just look at Xenoblade 3 and Xenogears. The similarities between these two are endless, so a second planet that is also called Earth isn't that much of a stretch. That said, we still need a reasonable explanation as to how there are two versions of the planet, and fortunately, Future Redeemed gives us just that. You may recall during the radio scene that it was stated that a number of interstellar ships had already left Klaus's Earth on the Earth Life Colonization Project, taking a current total of 3 million people out into the stars. Based on the name of this project alone, it's not difficult to assume that the purpose of Project Exodus was to discover a new habitable world for humanity to reside on, but this isn't as easy as it might sound. Within our own Milky Way galaxy, for instance, it's speculated by scientists that there are only a handful of potentially habitable planets which could sustain Earth life, and so even in the context of a civilization with the technology to harness the conduit and travel to the Eta Carina Nebula, roughly 8,500 light years away, it's still rather unlikely that any one of these ships which departed from Klaus's world actually achieved their goal and found a new home. But what if one did? Well, for the sake of this theory, we'll be assuming that one ship did find a suitable planet, and based on the focus of the Icarus, the 8th ship to have left from Klaus's world, I'd assume that it was these colonists which were successful. After arriving on their new home, which for the purposes of this video I will dub Earth 2.0, humanity likely then began to colonize this new planet, and in time, probably coinciding with the events of Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3, it would take the shape of a second Earth, independent from its original. But whilst this does explain this particular mystery, it brings up a whole nother point about the remaining ships that left from Klaus's world. What was their fate? Well, I believe that these remaining ships joined forces after the Klaus experiment and became the Sumerian Federation. Admittedly, very little is known about these guys aside from them ruling over 6 million light years worth of space, but it was revealed during a side quest with the Zarubogan, one of the alien races within X, that the Sumerians resemble human beings, further supported from the Ganglions' motive for wiping out humanity. In fact, the Ganglion were genetically engineered to dissolve when they came into contact with the DNA of their creators, and so the fact that Luxor perished when falling into a pool of DNA from every living creature on Earth 2.0 proves that they are genetically similar, supporting their origins being one and the same as the Sumerians, which is of course already explained through this theory. Interestingly, the similarities don't end here, however, as the people of Klaus's world were also encountering some trouble with the Saviorite rebels, translated to Salvators in the Japanese version. In fact, the Salvator faction is actually present within Xenosaga, coincidentally led by Dmitry Yuriev, and is composed of people who have been genetically engineered, usually as bioweapons. Based on this information, I believe that the people of Klaus's world were creating their own life forms, and some of their creations desired their very own human rights, shown through the mention of the Saviorite Human Rights Protection Bill, and when they were denied these basic rights, they revolted in the form of the Saviorite rebels, and attacked Rhadamanthus, hoping to seize the conduit for themselves, and triggering Klaus to hastily perform his experiment. Based on the morals of the people of this era, it's likely to assume that the Sumerians wouldn't have any trouble with continuing these unethical practices, eventually leading them to create subsequent life in the form of many alien life forms, including the Ganglion and Zarubogan. But this time, they would program failsafes into each of their creations to prevent another tragedy like what they had experienced with the Saviorite rebels. To summarize the theory so far though, I believe that one of the ships that left Klaus's world, namely the Icarus, discovered a new habitable world and created Earth 2.0, whereas the remaining ships which left around the same time would band together and form the Sumerian Federation, gradually taking control of every sector of their own galaxy. Now that we have the prospect of a second planet established, most of the issues surrounding X being canon to the Klaus Saga are resolved, but this doesn't explain how the Blade games will actually link together. Xenoblade X would lead us to believe that Earth 2.0 got destroyed during the alien incursion. However, I am now of the opinion that something different happened, thanks to the entities we know as the Ghosts. Now, we know even less about the Ghosts than we do the Sumerians, in that we know nothing at all other than what the art book tells us, which is also nothing. In essence, we're not supposed to know anything about this enemy quite yet, and so until we get any sort of sequel or a prequel, we will certainly be left in the dark. But there is one interesting thing that we can talk about, and that is the mothership, specifically its resemblance to Origin. You can probably see where this is going, but I believe that the Ghost ship itself is actually an early adaptation of Origin from Xenoblade 3. Admittedly, the only evidence I have to support this is the resemblance that both share, along with the Ghosts kind of resembling the Mobius scraps, but as I said before, we're not supposed to know about the Ghosts quite yet, so let's just assume I'm right for now. This is of course only a theory. Following this assumption, I believe that instead of Earth 2.0 being destroyed like we're led to believe, it was instead assimilated into Origin, adding to the foundations which made up Ionios, now known in Xenoblade X as Mira. Yup, I'm also saying within this theory that Mira is a future version of Ionios, and I have proof. We know now that planets assimilated into Origin do not exist within physical space, shown through the ending of Future Redeemed when both planets appeared out of nothingness, meaning that it's possible that Earth 2.0 was eaten and merged into Mira, rather than outright being annihilated. Furthermore, the artbook even uses wording that supports this theory and idea even more, mentioning each summoned world, implying that Mira is composed of multiple planets already. At minimum, I would guess that Mira is currently composed of 5 different planets, based on the number of moons currently orbiting it, one of which is almost certainly the Rothians' homeworld, as Gajar comments on how Koldros resembles it, and the artbook even refers to it as Roth. This would also explain how the White Whale managed to end up on Mira alongside the Ganglion, who arrived during the battle above Earth 2.0 after being engulfed in a white light. This white light. If you recall, it was the ghost which rediscovered the White Whale 2 years after it had managed to escape from Earth 2.0, and whilst we never see the mothership itself in this scene, based on the verbal description of the events that led them to crashing on Mira, it appears that the exact same events unfolded upon the White Whale, as did the Ganglion and the Manon. This in itself does bring up the question, however, of if Earth 2.0 was assimilated into Origin and is now part of Mira, why don't the people of New LA recognize it? And where is everyone who wasn't evacuated? Simply, Mira is a big place, and throughout the story of Xenoblade X, the focus of Blade is to find and reacquire the Lifehold, and thus they never really set out all that far afield. For all we know, Earth 2.0 could make up the other side of the planet and would be relatively untouched to human presence, as everyone who wasn't evacuated would have been assimilated into Origin, similarly to Xenoblade 3. In fact, everyone on the White Whale was only present in the form of their mimeosomes, meaning that Origin couldn't snatch up their souls like it could do everyone else on Earth 2.0, because they weren't technically there, only existing as data within the Lifehold. This does mean that everyone who remained on the planet when it was originally assimilated, however, may still actually be alive, possibly pointing in the direction of a Lao redemption arc, if he ever rediscovers his family. Speaking of which, Lao's resurrection, and most of the other mysteries surrounding Mira, could also be explained with the presence of Origin, as its original purpose was of course to reconstruct matter and restore the lives of the people of Keves and Agnes both. Whilst many people do die throughout the duration of Xenoblade X, Lao was the only one who had come into contact with human DNA, and even released yellow life motes whilst passing away, like those in Xenoblade 3. Ultimately, I feel that this explanation proves that Xenoblade X can be canon to the Klaus Saga, as this theory goes a long way in clarifying many of the confusing and convoluted elements of these games. I believe that this is roughly the direction that the Xenoblade series is heading towards, and regardless of if we get something similar or completely different, I'm sure that Xenoblade 4 will still have something special in store for us. Maybe something like this. That's right, in addition to my theory on how and why Xenoblade X can be made canon, I also have a few other predictions surrounding the next game itself. Now admittedly, everything from this part of the video forwards should be taken with a grain of salt, and is more or less the ramblings of a crazy person, but just let me cook and we'll see if we can get anywhere. Whilst Xenoblade 3 was the ending to the Klaus Saga, it also felt as if it was setting up the plot points for the next arc of this story, which I'll call the Yuriev Saga. I speculate that Xenoblade 4 will take place on the reformed Ionios within the distant future, where life will be continuously walking towards the future, until the past itself catches up with them. I hinted at how advanced the people of Klaus's era were before, by mentioning how far their ships could travel, which is why I speculate that they would have been able to detect the space-time anomaly of both worlds being repaired back into one. The remaining descendants of these people, now obviously known as the Samarians, journeyed back home to what is in essence their very own Lost Jerusalem, only to now find it already inhabited by the life Klaus left behind, referencing the blue star present at the end of Future Redeemed. What would follow is an epic tale between the Samarians, the original owners of the planet, and the descendants of Kevis and Agnes, fighting for control of the planet and rediscovering the many secrets of their world, ending with the betrayal of Dmitry Yuriev. Whilst his motives may slightly differ from that of Xenosaga, I believe his ultimate goal of acquiring the power to challenge God will remain the same, and to do so, he will reactivate Origin and create whatever the ghosts are, or relinquish it to them, allowing chaos to ensue. Earth 1.0 to be swallowed by Origin, becoming the foundations for Mira, and causing one lone girl to escape into the cosmos, eventually arriving on Earth 2.0. I'm of course talking about Elma, who would be revealed to actually be a blade. Now there's more evidence for this than you might think, as Elma possesses what is called a Soma crown, this doohickey here on her forehead, which according to the early notes within the art book, shares some similarities with core crystals. For instance, it changes shape based on her emotions, and can draw in energy from the surrounding area, similar to how core crystals can change colour and absorb ether energy. My guess would be that this is an early rendition of what core crystals were supposed to look like, and after Takahashi has mentioned that each and every entry of the Xenoblade Chronicles series is one singular episode of a larger narrative throughout time and space, I guess we can only wait and see what the future has in store for us. Massive thanks to both Dumb Xeno YouTube and Imperfect Works, as well as everyone else who helped me with this video, as well as Lugal Banda from the Xenomira website for translating the Xenoblade X art book. None of this would have been possible without all of their help. If you've enjoyed this video though and want to stay up to date with all the latest and greatest Xenoblade content that I bring to the channel, then make sure to click that subscribe button and notification bell. I thank you all for watching this far into the video, and hope to catch you in the next one. This is JB, signing off.